welcome to Adventures in Life. I'm your host, Earl Beecher. Our guest is Grace F. Napolitano. Did I say that right?
You did correct.
You always do it with an accent somehow that I haven't quite caught.
The
Grace.
Italian accent.
The Italian accent. Anyway, she is the Assemblywoman from the 58th District. Where is the 58th District?
That encompasses 7 cities: Norwalk, Santa Fe Springs, South Whittier, the unincorporated area of South Whittier, South El Monte, Montebello, Pico Rivera, and then also unincorporated Los Nietos. Roughly about 380-some-odd-thousand folks.
Oh, that's quite a few people there.
A few.
And I was handed this piece of paper which mentions your accomplishments, and I was really impressed, Mrs. Napolitano. It says that you are the chair of the Assembly's only standing committee fully dedicated to international trade issues.
That is correct.
Now, you have a conference every year that deals with the subject of international trade, don't you?
And that is correct. That is why this year we prevailed upon the Speaker of the House to reestablish a committee which was disbanded in about 88 or 89 to deal with international trade, because California's small and medium-sized business is the backbone of California's economy. They comprise about 70% of our economy. And for California to be the 6th or 7th world largest economy, it has a lot to say about what role small business plays.
And yet, is California being left out when it comes to the world market, what's going on at the present time?
Yes, in various areas. We have had, unfortunately, several things that have happened in California, such as 187, which has left a very bad impression of Californians in Mexico. So they're trading with Texas. Texas says, give them to us. I've run into the president of the Hispanic Chambers over there. He says, guys, you guys are doing us a great favor. We are getting probably about close to maybe $70–80 billion worth of trade that we should, in California, be getting, our businesses should be getting.
$70–80 billion? Mm-hmm. With a B?
With a B, not mill, bill.
Bill.
And in areas with foreign markets, such as South America, in the areas of Southeast Asia, the Pacific Rim, we've established trade offices, but unfortunately we're not coordinating those efforts, and that's what we intend to do to assist trade and commerce, the California's agency that's primarily responsible for doing the outreach, to come back on track and begin to work with small and mid-sized business, not necessarily the conglomerates, not those that can afford to do their own travel and their own digging, so to speak, but be able to identify, they've already defined the clusters. We need to be able to help small business reach that information.
Okay, so that we have information the small business person needs to be able to reach. At the same time, we have representation that we can help them with, so they don't have to send their people overseas necessarily. Correct. So there's a lot of things in place to help. What does the small business person need to learn or to know so they can begin to take advantage of it? Well,
there's a myriad of things, and that's what trade conferences are for, and they usually are put together by nonprofits, businesses themselves, the education institutions, the chambers, all volunteer. This is all totally a volunteer effort that has gone into the last few conferences. And the main thrust is at providing one place where a businessman can come for a minimal amount, like $40, $50. I think this year, or the last few years, has been in the $30, $40 range. We'll provide you information, access to that information, information on different countries, what their product or their infrastructure, their financing. You get to talk to some of the consul generals. There are workshops that will give you the ABCs of exporting, heads up on cultural differences. Everything has...
You hit a sensitive point there. Are there some cultural differences you have to be that aware of if you are not personally over in their country?
Most definitely. Every country has its own flavor. It's like America. There's certain things that we find offensive. Somebody comes in not knowing, they may not knowingly, not necessarily insult us, but make us feel uncomfortable. In Thailand, I just have had the opportunity to be able to visit that country. I was asked not to wear pants to formal meetings, or not to cross my legs, and don't point your feet at the representative of the king. Minimal things we don't recognize.
Wouldn't even
They're
cross
not
your
even
mind.
looking at him anymore, but still those are influences that you don't want to create a negative aspect to that individual you're going to want to do business with. In Shanghai, which also I visited, the Minister of Economic Development said, first we become friends, then we do business. Although that's an international language, friendship and then business, it's still important to recognize how that individual feels to be able to gain their respect and their confidence and be able to go on.
I'm very uncomfortable with small talk. Now, is that what becoming friends amounts to?
In the beginning. Yeah, it depends on the approach. In both visits that I've had abroad, I've made it very clear to the people that I'm talking to. I'm representing California small and mid-sized business. My objective is to let them know how interested my businesses are, the different kinds of areas that we excel in education and the clusters, et cetera, et cetera.
What are the clusters?
Entertainment, agriculture, biotech. Silicon Valley is its own world. Those are just a few of them.
I see. So that we, in especially Southern California, we have the entertainment, for example. And the world is interested in what we're doing.
The world is very interested in what we're doing. You mentioned California. I'm from California. And remember the bull story about everybody listens? They want to know what California is doing, correct, what California is doing in technology, what California is doing in education. Even in the United States, they look at California for leadership, not necessarily because they want to emulate or follow it, but because they want to know how it works. And if it works in California, maybe they'll massage it a little bit, hone it down, and then implement it in their own areas. And this is something that is very standard. In Thailand, in Shanghai, in different areas that I've been to, their ranking officials have been trained in the U.S., or specifically, some of them in Berkeley, Davis, USC, UCLA. What does that say for our education system?
It says our system is one that attracts people from all over the
Correct.
world.
Yeah.
And of course, this is a point very dear to my heart because I taught at...
As an educator, you understand the value.
I taught for many decades, in fact, and particularly in the field of finance. Now, you have traveled and you've come back and you know that there are cultural differences. What does a small business person here, what's the first step? How do we get them started so they know they can do something?
Knowing that they have a product or a service. It's not just restricted to a product. It can also be a service, engineering, a consulting of services that are very key to people traveling to this country to find out what we have, where we have it, how to get a hold of it.
Are you talking about sort of guiding people who come from overseas?
Not only guiding, but being able to assist them in making the connections with the individuals whose services or product they need or want.
Okay. This is one of the things that I've been hoping to develop at the university is a list of names so that somebody coming and they're interested in a particular product, so-and-so in Ontario or so-and-so in Santa Fe Springs or whatever, would be a perfect person for you to talk to obtain this.
Which is one of the reasons why I try to impress upon my education institutions, especially higher learning, that some of the students have got to be made aware of the opportunities in international trade, whether it be languages, international law, any of the services that go into the importing, exporting. Being able to do consulting is a magnificent thing.
They tell me it's almost time to pause for a public service announcement, but I do want to talk to you about the World Trade Commission that you're working with and the kind of services that you have and how a person can tap into that. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Our guest is Grace Napolitano from the 58th District, and she is explaining to us what a small business person has to do to get started in doing business with overseas.
Well, essentially a business must have been in business for a few years for them to understand the value of being able to sell a product. Anywhere in the world, there is a market for what we have, whether it's a service or a product. They must understand that there are differences.
I'm intrigued, before you go too far, how can you sell a service?
You have attorneys that can tell you about the U.S. law or California law or importing and exporting. Whether it's an engineer, there's SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, who are doing projects in South America. They do the feasibility studies for those countries. I mean, there's services being sold constantly.
You even mentioned the possibility of foreign people coming to this country who need to have somebody to guide them and to help them to find their way.
It's just like us. If we want to find a country that wants our product, you can either go to Commerce and they'll SIC code it and find out what country does. But when you get to the country, you won't know how, if you don't know the language, if you don't know where they're at, if you don't know, have the ability to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. So then you would want somebody to assist you in finding the way through the maze.
You know, somehow or another, I think the educational institutions with the foreign language departments could have something built right in there where a graduate student would be an ideal person to help navigate somebody around.
This is, I think, where education should be picking up excellent areas to teach our students to fill the future jobs in labor.
I think you're right. Now, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to know what was meant by services. If you can pick up your thought.
The businesses would then be able to understand that if you go in another country, you always have a risk of losing money. So you want to be sure that when you start off, you understand what the ramifications are of doing international trade. What banks handle international trade, letters of credit, etc., the shipping, the cost, the packaging, everything that goes into it. So they need to really get into that, understand it, maybe go to a trade conference such as the ones we put on to see what the steps are that they should know before they get involved. But in essence, any business, small business, 5 employees, 100 employees, we consider those still small business. They're very viable. A product is saleable, and especially if it comes from California or the U.S. People in other countries know the quality, and they are willing to pay for it in many instances.
I had a class I taught at Santa Monica College in international business, and 80% of my students were from Belgium, Holland, France, England, one from Russia and Poland, and but mainly Germany and
they love our
Belgium.
Technology and our education.
I said, we got into a discussion one day, Grace, about Euro Disney. And I said, now the Commissioner of Trade came on saying, we don't want McDonald's, we don't want Mickey Mouse, we don't want this. And I said, and right after that, they cut to some young people in a McDonald's who loved everything American. And I said, now tell me, you're here, you're my class, give me the real lowdown on this. I want to know what it's like. And the kid says, well, we're here in America, that ought to tell you the answer right there. And I said, yeah, I'm asking a very prejudiced group. And they said, yes, you are. We're here. We want to learn, and we've got job offers waiting when we get back home.
It is a very highly priced asset is for a person from another country to have an American education.
They like that.
Well, it allows them the ability to understand our ways, our culture, how we do business, what kind of business, what are the likes and dislikes of Americans, how do you negotiate with them, how do you sit and talk to them, do you wine them, dine them, what is it that is necessary?
I see. Besides the business thing, I do want to wrap this up that I want to touch on women in politics.
My favorite subject.
That's why I want to get into it with you. Is there something more we need to say about business to have people know that there are places to call? For example, the World Trade Commission.
The World Trade Commission, it meets in various areas. Early in the year, it met in Washington. About 2 months ago, it met in Sacramento. They meet all over, and they're mostly appointees by the governor and by members of the Assembly or the Senate. They set policy for trade. My understanding is they're going to be meeting more regularly, which is something that they have not been doing. They set policy for trade and commerce with the recommendations of the staff of Trade and Commerce, and to me that's kind of ass backwards. They should be, if they're going to be a free rein, they should be a separate agency, then can recommend, because these are business people who know about commerce and understand business,
yes,
who should be recommending to the committee, to the either my committee or to Trade and Commerce, precisely how they view trade to be helpful, or how they would be able to further the interest of California throughout the world. This is what that committee is supposed to be for.
But they do have materials that they can send to a small business person who calls. How does a person get in touch? How do they?
Well, you know as much about it as I do, okay?
Oh, all right.
I'm an ex officio member appointed by the
I'll make it
Speaker.
a point to learn so I can talk about it on camera one of these times.
It's a very, very credible commission. They're very, very interesting individuals who are very, very high in the different areas of commerce in business. And I had the greatest respect for them. I've only met them twice. Haven't sat at their meeting for any great length of time, because at both times, once we were in Washington doing our thing with the Assembly, and the following one, we were in session, I had to be on the floor voting. So those times, you know, are very difficult to just get up and leave and sit in a meeting for 3 or 4
yes,
hours.
Yes.
But I do believe that they can be a very critical committee for California small business. I think everybody is taking a very long look at California's economy and what has made it what it is, and the fact that it is small business that needs the help and not mega business.
Okay, on that point, let's talk about women in politics. You are an excellent example of a woman who has decided to take a political career, and there are others who are very prominent now. Both of our senators are
women.
Are ladies, yes.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you decide to do that?
It's rather an interesting thing. I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that in my case, I waited until my children were grown. I've retired twice. At that point, I felt that rather than just retire to nothing or maybe another part-time job, I would put back something that I've gotten. My mother's from Mexico, deceased, my father from Texas. I've raised 5 children, I have 12 grandchildren, and I think it's time that we begin to put back into our country that which we've received. And I've received plenty. I've worked for it, make no mistake about it. But I've received the ability to reach where I am, because that's what America's about.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. I have 6 grandchildren, and I'm concerned about the legacy we're leaving for them.
Precisely.
And I think there are a lot of people at our same point in life who say, whoa, we've got to give them something better.
Well, what we don't realize is that our children are our most valuable assets, and our grandchildren are our future. And if we do not begin to take a good, long, hard look at what we're leaving for them, if we're going to leave them embargoed for the rest of their lives by just having the budget go haywire, if we're not going to leave them a clean environment, if we're not going to teach them what politics is, the power it can have to help people, politics is one thing, public service is another. I consider myself a public servant, and that's what I wish we could do more.
Yes, politics has become sort of a questionable word, but I think every politician I've met really thinks of themselves as a public servant, because you get enough abuse that you have to be motivated strongly from within to say, I can make a difference and it's going to be for the better. Isn't that true?
Correct. That is correct. I've served my time at the local level, and nothing is more humbling than serving as a local council individual, because they can call you at home, stop you at the store, and dress you down if that's what they feel you need. But you hear it from the local level. That's where it begins, and that's where the ideas for policy implementation come in. We have somehow moved into the party agenda, and I think we need to move back into the people agenda.
Amen. I don't know what else I can say to that, because I do believe that what is good for the whole community, the parties, why all this fighting going on?
Power. Some might want to say that it gives you the ability to make the appointments, to do pork barrel, to do all these other good things. And once, sometimes, this happens more than once, individuals get elected to go to Sacramento. They're out of the sight of their voters. Constituency. And I think we need to understand that wherever we are, we're representatives of our district, and we should always keep that in mind when we vote.
Your district will let you know, won't they?
Yes, but understand that there's always the dynamics of politics that incumbents always have the edge. Now we have term limits overturned. Mm-hmm. I'm against term limits. I always have been. I mean, I'm sorry, I am for term limits. And yet
let's be sure we get this straight.
No, I am. I believe I plan to serve only 2 terms. I may serve a 3rd one, but I refuse to serve anymore. We need the new blood. We need new ideas. It becomes your office, your district, and it isn't. It belongs to the people, and we need to be sure that whoever's there understands that they're there on borrowed time by the people and for the people. And we strayed. That's why people are so angry. The voters are so angry. It's because I may include myself because I am an elected official. We do not react to the local issues as we should. We're too much into the national, the state, and we forget that everything is local.
Our whole conversation today has been on the international plane, but we're talking about helping the local people. Mm-hmm. So that it all comes together sooner or later.
Correct.
For the good of the whole society.
And going back to your question about women in politics, women seem to be more concerned about the family issues, about the issues of the home, of how it affects children, more than men.
Well, that is the building block of our society. They tell me we need to pause for another public service announcement. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Our guest is Grace Napolitano. I didn't say it right then either.
That's
Correct
fine.
me on it again, please.
Napolitano.
Napolitano, with a slight Italian accent. How the main thing I think that we want to get across in this conversation is for people in small business, medium-sized business, to call and get to some of these conferences that are happening. There are a lot of them going on. Mm-hmm. How can they get tapped in?
Well, they can call the chamber, their local chamber, and the chamber might know. And if they're not able to get it locally, they can call the State Assembly Committee on International Trade and Development. And certainly we should have information, if not Trade and Commerce, an agency for the state of California whose responsibility to give information is in Sacramento.
So the main thing, folks, is to get involved. Call up, find out what you need to do. You can call Grace's office. She will give you, her people will give you the next conferences, where they are, and help you to get started. And I think this is the main thing that we could contribute
Correct.
Today.
This is locally, you can also call the mayor's office because they're usually having international visitors, and so they are always channeling them. I don't know if all the cities would have it, but I know Los Angeles does because they have such a large visiting population.
Oh, yes, yes. I want to thank you for being our guest. I really appreciate it, and I feel like that some of the women are doing a beautiful job in working in the political arena.
I think all women are doing a beautiful job.
All right.
We try twice as hard. We have to. That's our lot.
I see.
We thoroughly enjoy it, though.
So thank you for being our guest, and I want to thank our viewers for joining us also. And please join us soon again for more Adventures in Life.